So Netflix has secured the streaming rights to Sesame Street. This is very exciting. We weren't sure where Sesame Street was going to end up, so we could breathe a sigh of relief. Even if we're not happy about Netflix specifically, we can at least breathe a sigh of relief that it has found a home. Netflix will also be getting a backlog of episodes, and Netflix is also going to develop some video games based off of the Sesame Street property. Netflix has been getting more into very, very casual games, I think mostly for mobile, the mobile app of Netflix. So they're going to be kind of using that partnership to springboard some additional games for Netflix. I got a quote here from the official Sesame Street Twitter account saying, quote, "The support of Netflix, PBS, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting serve as a unique public-private partnership to enable Sesame Street to continue to help children everywhere grow smarter, stronger, and kinder," end quote. Another quote here from Paula Kerger, president and CEO of PBS, saying, quote, "I strongly believe that our educational programming for children is one of the most important aspects of our service to the American people, and Sesame Street has been an integral part of that critical work for more than half a century. We're proud to continue our partnership in the pursuit of having a profound impact on the lives of children for years to come," end quote. And this is going to begin later this year, I would imagine in the fall. I'm not sure when Sesame Street seasons start every year, but I would imagine this is going to start up in the fall, because that's usually when new seasons of TV shows start. So, a little bit of background, of course, on Sesame Street. This is really important, right? It's an educational children's television program, originally conceived. I mean, it still fills this function, but not as much anymore for the reasons we'll talk about. But it was originally conceived to serve low-income inner-city children, typically, black children, Hispanic children, as a means of supplementing their, subpar public education, right? These school districts were not being funded the way that they should be, so Sesame Street was kind of conceived in that way to be a free resource, right? It debuted in 1969 on public broadcast television, first on NET, which was like the predecessor to PBS, and then later PBS. It's produced by, originally it was called the Children's Television Workshop or Children's Theater Workshop. Now it's called Sesame Workshop. This is a nonprofit organization with funding that also comes from, public investment from PBS, right? And of course, it includes Muppet characters. If you go back to watch those early Sesame Street episodes, the Muppets were just one piece of the puzzle. Now it's like it dominates the identity and the structure of Sesame Street. But these are very iconic characters, including, but certainly not limited to, Big Bird, Oscar the Grouch, Bert and Ernie, Cookie Monster, the Count, Grover, and then more recently, like, what was it, in the 80s and 90s, you get Elmo, and then a little bit after my time, I guess, the newer character, Abby Cadabby, right? There's more new characters, but, Abby Cadabby is about as far as I'm aware of like, the new characters, right? But the reason why this has been in the news is that the television rights for this were kind of in flux, right? So back in the mid 2010s, Sesame Workshop they struck a deal with HBO to air episodes of Sesame Street on HBO first, and then it would come on it would air on PBS months later, like I think something like 8 or 9 months later, like something crazy. And of course, this was very controversial considering Sesame Street's origins, right? As a resource for underprivileged children. Now it's still going to come to PBS, but the first run of it is now behind a paywall. The reason why they did this is because it was a revenue source, right? It was a way to keep the lights on, and have more episodes and have more expensive episodes and things like that. This was on HBO, then it was moved to HBO Max in 2020, and then about 5 or 6 months ago, right near the end of I think it was mid-December of 2024, the Warner Brothers Discovery, who of course owns HBO Max, announced that it was not renewing their distribution deal. A backlog of episodes would still be available through 2027, but Sesame Street would need to find a new home, right? And I actually made a video about this at the time. And I went through some options of who could maybe pick up these rights, and I suggested a Netflix or Amazon or Apple, because, and here's why Netflix specifically makes a lot of sense, right? They have the cash to make this deal, right? I'm not to say that Warner Brothers didn't have the cash, but they just didn't want to put the money towards this, whereas Netflix, their entire business model is just throwing money at the wall, right? So they have the capital to do this. It's an iconic property that for many families is non-negotiable. Like, you know, if your kid loves Sesame Street, you can't turn to them and say, "Oh, sorry, you can't watch Sesame Street anymore because now it's just on Netflix," right? So it's non-negotiable. And for Netflix and all these streaming services, really, but really Netflix, children's programming is so lucrative, right? Variety notes that it makes up about 15% of Netflix's total viewing hours. It even has like a dedicated Netflix Kids profile, so you know you can make a profile for your kids, so it's only showing approved kid-friendly content. So it also makes me wonder, why is Warner Brothers moving away from, like, that was the whole reason why they were dropping the distribution deal, because they were like, we're changing up our strategy. We're not as interested in children's programming for HBO Max. Why? Like, it's so lucrative on its own, but also depending on what age group it is, you also have built-in nostalgia. So people, you know, it's a long-term investment, but if you have a show geared for 7 to 9-year-olds, maybe when they're 17, they might be like, oh, let me just pop that on. Let me just have a little nostalgia hit, right? So I don't really know why they're doing that, but again, this is really great to see. If, again, for no other reason, the question, it was all up in the air. Now the question has been answered. And this is so important because, like I said in my other video about Sesame Street, but it bears repeating, this is a very hot take. It's probably not true, but it feels right. Sesame Street is, in my opinion, the most important public investment in human history. More than any infrastructure project, any other social good, I feel like Sesame Street, in terms of the educational benefit is given so many children, that we as a society are just better because our children are starting off smarter, right? And I have a quote here from PBS Kids Senior Vice President and General Manager Sarah DeWitt saying, quote, "Public media is essential, and we know from years of research that providing new, high-quality content to children across the country for free helps prepare them for success in school and life," end quote. And that's so important that it's new content, because you could just say, well, why don't you just recycle? Like, the alphabet hasn't changed, the numbers haven't changed, so why don't you just show older episodes? Which you can do, and they do, right? The syndication, but you want to have new content, so the content's always staying on the cutting edge of, best practices of teaching that age group, right? And like I said in my other Sesame Street video, it would be great if it could just be on PBS, but at least this guarantees its existence, right? Again, that was the same thing with the HBO deal, that at least it creates a revenue stream, especially considering all the turmoil with public broadcasting and Trump pulling the plug on the funding for that. This really helps secure its existence for at least the foreseeable future. And unlike the HBO deal, this will actually premiere day and date on PBS and Netflix on the same day. Which is so weird because Netflix is so adamant about, not letting other people have their content. So it's really cool to see that, you're still going to be able to do this. So you don't even have to get Netflix. But I think Netflix is making the gamble here. But I think their reasoning is probably a lot of people might not even have cable. And obviously PBS, you don't need cable to access. But if you don't have cable, you probably are not going to take the time to set up your TV to access PBS either, right? So I think they're hoping that all of the people that are exclusively streaming viewers, they will then go to Netflix. But if you are someone that desperately needs PBS, you will take the time. If you are someone that needs that free content, you will take the time to set up your TV so that you can access that channel. So this is all really exciting, and I hope this gives Sesame Street the the resources to continue for the decades to come, so that I can show my children Sesame Street. Wow, what an interesting story. I'm sure you have some thoughts about the topic, so comment below, let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really, really helps people find the channel and makes me feel all warm inside. Until next time, I'm Peter Mancuso. Peace out.